U.S. History students, hello! Welcome to another review session brought to you by Links Education. This is your online U.S. History teacher. Today, we will cover chapters 15 and 16, the Reconstruction Period and the New South. So come on, join me. We are going to look at some of the questions that deals with the policies of the radical Republicans in the Reconstruction period. So first one, which statement best summarizes the beliefs of Booker T. Washington? A. Social equality for African Americans would be easier to achieve than legal rights. B. The best solution for African Americans was to return to Africa. C. The way to dissolve the barriers of segregation and bring about an end to Jim Crow laws was by active violent resistance. D. The most immediate means for African Americans to achieve equality was to expand their opportunities for vocational education. So Booker T. Washington, we associate him with this D, vocational education. It's easier to remember because you have the clue here, book, right, and education. So we'll have this D. The next question, worth $200. So I hope that you are learning in this kind of a review session. Although important strides were made, Reconstruction failed to provide lasting guarantees of the civil rights of the freedmen. Which evidence best supports this statement? A. Passage of Jim Crow laws in the latter part of the 19th century. B. Ratification of 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. C. Refusal of Southern states to allow sharecropping. D. Passage of the Civil Rights Acts of 1866. And so, the Jim Crow law, the segregated facilities in the South. Alright, let's move on to our next question. The dispute between President Andrew Johnson and Congress during the Reconstruction era illustrates the constitutional principle of A. Equality of justice under the law. B. Federalism. C. One man, one vote. Or D. Separation of powers. So that is of course D. And let's look at the next question. In their plans for Reconstruction, both President Abraham Lincoln, President Andrew Johnson sought to A. Punish the South for starting the Civil War. B. Force the Southern states to pay reparations to the federal government. C. Allow the Southern states to re-enter the nation as quickly as possible. D. Establish the Republican Party as the only political party in the South. So both of them wanted the immediate reintegration of the Southern states. So that's C. And moving on to the next question. I hope that you're finding these questions easy. The provision of the radical Republicans plan for Reconstruction that Southern states found most objectionable was that a former Confederate state could not be readmitted to the Union unless that state A. Gave land and money to former slaves. B. Ratified the 14th Amendment. C. Granted full citizenship to former Confederate leaders. Or D. Agreed to modernize its economy. And that's course, the 14th Amendment. Let's look at the next question. This one's worth $5,000. Yay! The Jim Crow laws upheld by the Supreme Court in Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896, provided for A. Free land for former slaves. B. Separate public facilities based on race. C. Racial integration of public schools. Or D. Voting rights for African American males. And that is the separate public facilities. Moving on to our next question. The passage of the Homestead Act and the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad helped to fulfill the United States' commitment to A. Reconstruction, B. Racial equality, C. Manifest destiny, or D. Conservation of natural resources. And American expansion, of course, with the Transcontinental Railroad is associated to the manifest destiny. Let's look at the next question. By the way, if you're not familiar with the manifest destiny, that is so important. So make sure that you find that in your book. The aim of the Taoist Act of 1887 was to A. Restore previously taken land to Native American Indian tribes. B. Maintain traditional Native American Indian cultures. C. Assimilate Native American Indians into American culture. Or D. End all governmental contract with Native American Indians. And that is an example of a very specific example of the government's plan related to the assimilation policy. See. Next one, worth $50,000. And our question is about the Indian Wars. The Indian Wars that occurred between 1860 and 1890 were mainly the result of A. Disputes over the spread of slavery. B. Conflict with Mexico over Texas and California. C. The search for gold in California. Or D. The movement of settlers onto the Great Plains. And of course, that's the expansion, the American expansion to the west. That's the D. And now to the fourth to the last question. It's still about the Taoist Act. The passage of the Taoist Act in 1887 was primarily an attempt by the United States government to A. Limit the power of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. B. Return eastern land to Native American Indian tribes. C. Encourage Native American Indians to give up their traditional cultures. D. Hire Native American Indians as military scouts. So again, this one is related to assimilation policy, and the government encouraged Native American Indians to give up their traditional cultures. That's C. Alright, we're almost done. This is the question that's worth $250,000. What American historian is best remembered for his influential frontier thesis? A. Henry Nash Smith. B. Helen Hunt Jackson. C. Charles Beard. D. Frederick Jackson Turner. And of course, that's Jackson Turner. The thesis related to the American expansion in the West, the last frontier, the frontier thesis. Next one. What new Indian policy did the United States attempt in the second half of the 19th century? Is it A. Concentration, B. Relocation, C. Assimilation, or D. Extermination? And we've been talking about the assimilation in a couple of questions now, so that is C. Okay. And the last question for the million. The closing of the frontier and the growth of industry in the late 1800s are two factors often associated with the A. Reduction of exports to Asian nations, B. Restoration of a plantation economy in the South, C. Formation of alliances with other nations, or D. Rise of United States imperialism. And so we're moving on to the next chapter of the U.S. history that is dealing with their expansion outside North America, and that is related to the period of imperialism. So our answer is D. That's the closing of the frontier, and this is now the expansion outside North America. Alright, so that's the D. I hope that you learned today. Make sure to constantly review in order to answer these questions, especially if you're preparing for the SAT and AP tests. Again, I hope that this helps you, and don't forget to share, subscribe to my channel, Links Education. I'll see you guys in the next review session. Bye for now.